Chapter 2, Part 3. All the members set to participate in Operation Infinity gathered in Marvin's Channel SOC room. They number 8, including AG. Everyone's an avatar, naturally, but no Digimon accompany them. A virtual monitor displays the briefing for the operation. It's an overseas operation, AG said to himself, swallowing hard. There are no borders in the digital world, but there are on the networks in the real world. Physical servers are hosted in countries with geopolitical borders and are subject to their laws or the rules of whatever organization owns them. The large-scale operation the SOC had been talking about was nothing less than the hacking of a foreign nation's server. The nation of X. They're near the bottom in terms of GDP, but they're notorious state sponsors of terrorism, Marvin said matter-of-factly. Some dictator or other had ruled over the nation for decades now. I've heard of them on the news, AG said quietly. You okay, AG? The other SOC bigwigs turned to look at the fresh face, having a somewhat naive reaction to the proceedings. So, we're just gonna mess these guys up because we don't like them for some reason. Is that it? The room erupted in laughter. AG began to suspect that most of the people in the room were not Japanese. Sorry, AG man. I know this is part of the briefing. It's pretty boring for your highly skilled code-cracking self, but we've got to get through it. We're all in the SOC family, but it's rare that we actually assemble a team at this level. Gotta make sure everyone's on the same page, Marvin said, patiently. The X Nation is a nuclear power and had recently engaged in cyber warfare in the digital world to distract from continued terrorist activities that threatened to destabilize the real world. A number of cyber attacks have come out of here in recent years. Just the other day they hacked an exchange. Just the other day they stole the equivalent of billions of dollars in cryptocurrency, Marvin said, returning to the matter at hand. That was their doing? AG couldn't help himself. That was a state-sponsored Digimon crime. And we can't let that happen in the grim economic bloc on our watch. This is fundamental to our ideals and of freedom. Grimm famously runs on Digicoin, or DC, its proprietary cryptocurrency. It let Grimm break away from the most popular fiat currency, the US dollar, and from the Grimm economic bloc. That bloc, in return, became the self-perpetuating source of Grimm's vast wealth. Based in the lawless digital world as it was, the bloc sent shockwaves through the real world's financial markets. Grimm's very existence posed a direct threat to the monopoly that governments and central banks held on currency production, which gave them the power to shape the world as they pursued their own interests. To these entities, the thought of DC reaching the same value as, say, the US dollar was a crisis scenario. The value of other currencies would collapse, and the public would suffer massive losses at the hands of a world they didn't even know existed. Those building their future in the digital world, meanwhile, would be afforded massive amounts of power. It would precipitate a financial crisis worse than any that had come before. The current ruling class would do everything in their power to place restrictions on the digital world, that they might one day control it themselves. Much of this went right over AG's head, but he understood that the world's governments stood in opposition to this crew. There was money in the digital world, which was what drew AG to it in the first place. Codecrackers were denounced as terrorists by the international community, but were nevertheless willing to risk everything to open a new frontier in the digital world. That freedom was intoxicating. But wait, if the X Nation is committing cyber terrorism and Digimon crimes, if you take a step back, so are all of us codecrackers right? AG asked, working through the problem as he went. The room erupted in laughter once more. Codecrackers weren't exactly upstanding citizens to begin with. You've got a point, AG. The difference is that the X-Nation's dictator does not respect the freedom of the network or the digital world as we do. To the extent that he does, he respects it only as far as it serves his own interests. Yeah, but I want to strike it rich too. Isn't that why we all became codecrackers? To change our lives? Well, that brings me to why we want to target the X-Nation. To piss off that dictator, AG thought to himself. The SOC bigwigs were even more to the point. We want to destabilize that sorry, balding excuse for a leader because of the mega machine Dramon. AG's interjection silenced the room. The X-Nation is using a mega Digimon to commit Digimon crimes and cyberterrorism, and they're pinning it on the SOC. AG had called Professor Ryosenji as soon as he got out of his private meeting with Marvin. All it took was the name Operation Infinity for the good professor to decipher their plans and explain the situation in painstaking detail. It all came back to the dictator of the X-Nation, and the fact that they only had a Mega Digimon. Back in the present, Marvin took a sharp breath. So, you know all about that, huh? Digimon crimes rarely make the news unless they lead to major accidents. That's how they remain a secret from the general public. You want to get back at the dictator who made you look bad? Damn right. You underestimate us, you pay the price, Marvin yelled. It was pure mafia logic. Make us look weak, and we'll get you right back. That's just how life as a codecracker worked. Everyone was here. This was it. The voice chat was crackling with nervous energy. Even their avatars looked stiff and twitchy. Seeing as there are some fresh faces here, allow me to introduce myself. I am the leader of the SOC, Tartarus, and I will be running this operation, a voice said above all the others. AG swallowed hard. Tartarus is here. AG had finally met Tartarus. Well, heard Tartarus. Our target is the X-Nation server. Our goal is to render the server useless. Additionally, we will capture their state secret, Machine Dramon. Incredible, AG thought to himself. A state secret Digimon. One capable of penetrating national security, or creating extremely hardened defenses against outside attacks. An ace in the hole for any fight, be it cyber, conventional, or some mix of the two. Even the tiniest nation in possession of such a Digimon would command international attention as countries with nuclear weapons once did. It's time to take that balding dictator down a peg! The entire squad erupted in cheers at those words. They set their watches to local time at the attack site. This is a fight for freedom, and those who raise the flag of freedom must wage a lawless war, Tartarus growled. For the freedom of the network, Marvin shouted at the top of his lungs, riding on Tartarus further. For the freedom of the digital network, the squad shouted back. No team of codecrackers is as unified as the Sons of Chaos, is what people will say if this operation succeeds. Soon the world will be forced to reckon with the SOC, a team of codecrackers capable of toppling nations. AG could feel the strength of Tartarus' leadership. The higher-ups took out their Digimon. The majority of them were cyborg types, a favorite among codecrackers. AG muted his microphone and looked down at the Digimon linker. This is it, Lugamon. Here we go. You keep reading that operation file. I've already read it. Right. One by one, each member's avatar disappeared from the virtual monitor. The Digimon, too, blinked out of existence. They were now mind-linked. AG slid his eyes down to the next item on the list. Launch a direct attack on the X-Nation server from the digital world. Alright, here goes. AJ's heart was leaping out of his chest. No matter how hardened the security, mind linking would allow him to slip in unnoticed, like a ninja. AJ pressed a button on his Digimon linker. Free the digital world from its bonds. Okay, AJ, you're up. Come on, pal, let's give it all we've got out here. AJ was almost certain he'd get to meet Tartarus face to face if they pulled this off. He took a deep breath. The sensors lit up for a check of AJ's vitals. He was clear to issue the command. Limiter disengaged. AJ's vision was bathed in white light, and he could feel everything slipping away. Mindlink! The Mindlink digitized AJ's consciousness and transferred it into Lugamon's Digicore. Out-of-body experience, AJ said in an exaggerated, spooky voice. What are you talking about? Lugamon was having none of AJ's jokes, as usual. Doesn't it feel like I'm some living spirit possessing you or something? Enough with the spiritual nonsense. If your consciousness is inside me, what happens to your body back in the real world? Are you dead? No, pretty sure I'm still alive. Pretty sure? Really? No, now that you ask. What the heck is going on with my body right now? AJ was suddenly very concerned. Didn't Ryosenji explain the risks of mind linking? Lugamon snapped, audibly exhausted. Yeah, but all his explanations are so hard to follow. I do remember him telling me to mind link somewhere private so people won't see me. He recommended the toilet. Did it look like he was asleep while he was mind linked? Or more like he passed out? I'll laugh if you peed yourself when you were the link, Lugamon said with a chuckle. I knew I should have sat on the toilet, AJ groaned. You'd give yourself hemorrhoids, Lugamon shot back. Lovely. I wonder what the SOC bigwigs are doing. AJ held up his hand of the conversation, but he kept turning Professor Ryosenji's words over in his mind. Now, before you meet with a member of the SOC's upper echelons, it's important that I show you something. Something that is a matter of life and death for you, Professor Ryosenji said, opening a classified file on the monitor in his DDL office. D4 classified ML experiment number date site DDL. The title card of the video was heavily redacted, but AJ could tell the ML stood for Mindlink and that D4 referred to the classified division made inside DDL, which meant this footage was a previous test. It was taken from a camera attached to the ceiling. A person dressed in a special suit sat on a sheet laid atop a bed. The suit was connected to something just out of frame by a cord, and they wore a helmet covered in sensors on their head. The whole getup prevented AJ from gleaning anything else about them, but they were obviously the subject of a mind-linking test. Who is that? He asked anyway. It was worth a shot. A hacker who worked for the laboratory, Ryosenji answered calmly. And a fantastic one. At that. They'd logged more hours mind-link than anyone else at the time. In fact, I believe their record in the simulator still stands. The video sped up. The test subject laid down and was strapped in. AJ was trying to figure out which Digimon this person was trying to mind-link with, but something awful happened before he could ask. A gasp stole his question. There was no sound on the video, so he couldn't tell what, if anything, was being said. Then again, he didn't need to. The hacker was convulsing wildly, as if they were being electrocuted. Had they not been securely strapped in, they would surely have fallen off the bed, risking further injury. Medical staff came rushing into the picture, futilely trying to hold the hacker still. AJ watched as they let out several silent screams. A few moments later, the hacker was motionless. The staff set about removing the suit, and the video cut out as they began removing the helmet. What happened? AJ asked, swallowing hard. Their partner Digimon ran into trouble. We theorized that this overloaded the mind link, Ryosenji said flatly. Overloaded it how? You haven't read the manual yet, have you? The professor asked admonishingly, his shoulders slumping. I'm more the learn by doing type. I shouldn't need to tell you that mind linking is extremely risky, Ryosenji said. Eiji instinctively nodded in response. Extremely, you say? As a result of fusing with the Digicore, your ability to communicate with and issue commands to your Digimon increases greatly. The speeds are otherworldly, but there's a limit to how long you can stay in this state. Okay. This time limit depends on the level of training and physical conditioning of the hacker or codecracker, their compatibility with a partner Digimon, and the Digivolution level of same. Right, the Digivolution level. For a rookie-level Digimon like Lugamon, the countdown is quite slow. This explains how you were able to spend so much time in the wall slum. Should Lugamon digivolve to the champion level or beyond, time will tick away far faster. Suppose through a chain of unfortunate events, Lugamon digivolves into Mega Statues. Eiji posited. I imagine the Mindlink window would be quite short indeed, the professor said. Eiji gulped. Why is there a time limit? Eiji wondered aloud. There's an upper bound on the amount of time one can remain mind-linked. I call it the limit line. Spend any amount of time above that line, and your consciousness will fuse with the digital world, trapping it there. When you say fuse, Eiji began, the Digicore is placed under immense strains as well, and in the worst case scenario, it would be completely destroyed. At the very least, it can lead to memory errors. I'm guessing the hacker in that video went over the limit line. What happened to them? A DMIA. Ryosenji enunciated each letter carefully. DMIA? It was obviously an acronym, but the meaning was lost on Eiji. Digitally missing in action. That's the designation for those who are lost to the digital world while out on assignment. The hacker you saw in that video, for instance, is one such case. Their consciousness will never find its way back to their corporeal form in the real world, and will likely never track it down in the digital world, the professor said quietly. Eiji flinched, disturbed by what he was hearing. People were completely lost, doomed to wander the digital world. So then, well, the body. What do you do with the body? That can't go to the digital world, right? Eiji was grasping at straws now. We left it in the lab room. It is now an empty husk, the professor replied, underlining the poor hacker's misfortune. You just left it there? They'd quite literally given up the ghost. There was no chance the hacker would be revived. Eiji flinched again. DMIAs have increased in recent years, but that also points to an increase of the overall skill of the average code cracker on the street. It means more of them are capable of mind-linking these days. The same can be said of the Digipolice's forces too. Of course, even so, once they cross the line, it ends one of two ways. And those are? Eiji asked, unsure if he wanted to know the answers. The vast majority of codecrackers aren't found in time and die once their bodies fail. I imagine this would be your fate, the professor said gravely. Oh, very comforting. So he'd die in his 3 tatami mat-sized one-room apartment and no one would be the wiser. His rent was paid via automatic withdrawal from his bank account. With his newfound savings, it'd be several months before an overdraft hit, meaning his neighbors would complain about the stench of his rotting corpse long before anyone else came to check on him. He'd be just another loner who died of unknown causes. Or, if you're lucky, you're found unconsciousness and taken in for medical treatment. You'd be in a coma, but your body would be looked after. For a time, anyhow. Unfortunately, not a single person who has been determined DMIA has naturally regained consciousness and returned to the real world. Not even one? We can't even locate the lost hacker's partner Digimon. We presume they've run off. Even if we did find them, the hacker's consciousness would likely have fused to their partner's digicore. Eiji was speechless. So long as he respected the mindlink time limit, he'd be able to put on quite the show. But it was a heck of a risk. For safety, I've set another line. The C line. C for caution. This is the line at which you stand the best chance of returning to the real world naturally if you sever the mind link and exiting the digital world. Sever the mind link at the C line before reaching the L line. Simple enough. The Digipolice follow the system to the letter. You may think them hasty when they sever the mind links, but now you know that there's a very good reason why.